Welcome to Carol's Journey. I'm your host today, Carolyn Smith-Malone. And today we're going to talk about genealogy. We're going to talk about the Underground Railroad. And while we're talking about it, I'd like to know from some of you in the audience if you are related or have some kind of relationship to some of the descendants on the Underground Railroad. Okay, today I'm going to welcome a cousin of mine, Canadian cousin, and she's part of the Underground Railroad. Okay, I want to thank you, Miss Bush, Miss Rochelle Bush. And the thing about it is, I want to briefly introduce some of your activities. You're a trustee at the British Methodist Episcopal Church there in St. Catharines, Ontario, on 92 Geneva Street. You're also the CEO of the Tubman Tour Canadian travel group. You're a historian, and matter of fact, you're a famous historian because we're looking on the internet and we saw you all over the place and everything. And I kind of consider you more or less a genealogy person. Expert on genealogy because you seem to know a lot and seem to be embracing a lot. Now, the thing about it is we want to start with our relatives, Charles Harper. Now, what can you tell me about Charles Harper?
Hey, Carol, it's nice to be on your show. Thank you for having me. But I knew you'd do that. I want to back it up to Reverend Grandpa Harper first. He was the minister in charge at the Salem Chapel when Harriet Tubman, the mighty woman called Moses, attended that church. So he was there. Then his son, Charles Alfred, which would be our 2 times great-grandfather. Yes, Charles Alfred Harper, who married Harriet Collis in 1869 in St. Catharines at the church. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So through them, and he had 9 children, Charles Alfred, as well as Harriet. They had 9 children, and that's where our connection comes in.
Right, exactly. Okay. Like, as far as I know, my relationship is with my great-great-grandmother, and your relationship is with her brother.
That's correct.
Am I correct? And that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, one of the interesting things that I need to talk about is he was a carpenter, to my understanding. And I'd like to know, with the 9 brothers and sisters and everything, what was the relationship or what was the chain of relationships with the other family members in terms of the family tree? How does the family tree construct itself?
Well, at the top of the tree so far is Reverend James Henry Harper, so Reverend Grandpa Harper. That's how we refer to him here because he was the minister in charge at the Salem Chapel. After him, for our main branch, so our connection would be Charles Alfred Harper, and then it would go down to your grandmother, Maud, or my grandfather, Charles Ernest. So it would branch out from there.
Right. Okay. Now, with the branching and everything going on, how do we continue on with this? How does we continue with the family tree in terms of our relatives?
Bringing us all together.
Yeah.
Continuing with family reunions.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So we haven't had one here in what, 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years.
So we're due for another one.
Right.
In St. Catharines.
Yeah. Well, we're due for a family reunion, providing the pandemic is over, and and I understand that the pandemic might be over very soon. And
Let's,
matter of fact, we're talking about the end of November when uh, the antidotes and stuff comes out. Because
oh, let's hope so.
I heard that Pfizer has created something, and they have a 90% success rate in terms of the antidotes and all that. So we may be having a family reunion next year.
Well, that would be wonderful.
Mhm.
Let's hope. Fingers crossed.
Right. Now, with the church, uh, the British Methodist Episcopal Church, how was that created?
The Salem Chapel was constructed by African American freedom seekers. So we just had her 165th anniversary. We celebrated it on November 4th, but it was only a Facebook post. So the church was actually, the first one was constructed here between 1814 and 1820, but it was an African Methodist Episcopal Society.
Right.
When they started the construction of the Welland Canal, the Black community was relocated to the Geneva and North Street area. William Wells Brown called it the hub, or the heart of the colored settlement or colored village. And he also said that North Street, that the church was located on, the second one that is, was the Broadway of the community, which it was. So the second one was constructed in 1835. It housed about 70 members. Harriet Tubman would have attended that church as well, because we did not build, well, our ancestors did not build the third church until after the 1850 Fugitive Slave Law passed. So they started fundraising for that church in October 1821. Construction started in November 1853, and then it was dedicated on November 4th, 1855, by Bishop Daniel Payne of the AME Church. So even though Reverend Grandpa Harper was there in attendance, of course, a higher ranking bishop was going to have the dedication. And that's what happened. And then, of course, we don't know for a fact if Tubman was there, but we certainly know that her parents and her brothers were. She had just came off a trip to Philadelphia, and she went down to Maryland at the time to visit her sister Rachel. But there's no document account that she was actually at the dedication ceremony.
Right.
Church is famous. Our ancestors built it. We were there.
Right. Okay.
And it's a National Historic Site.
Tell me about the relationship with Anthony Burns.
Reverend Burns was enslaved in Virginia. At the age of 19, he decided to escape, and he made it to Boston. So he was a free man for about 3 months. He made the mistake of acknowledging his enslaver on the streets of Boston. So with that, Burns, of course, was apprehended. As luck would have it, when he was taken to the courthouse, Henry Dana, who was one of Boston's leading abolitionists, a white man, decided to defend Burns's case. So in total, it was a 5-day trial, and it cost the U.S. government, and it's the largest amount under the Fugitive Slave Law, to cart someone back off to slavery, to return him to slavery. So it was $40,000. But there was also, a number of the cavalry, militia, local law enforcement. So you're looking at 22,000 armed men escorting a black man back to the harbor in Boston. So once Burns was re-enslaved, his friends in Boston did not forget about him. He was resold to an enslaver in North Carolina. His friends from Boston purchased his freedom. He decided that he would study theology at Oberlin College in Ohio. And then from there, he went on to Indiana. He left that community because of the racial restrictions. It was called the Black Codes at the time. Right. And then there was an ad in an abolitionist newspaper, a few of them, looking for someone to preach down here in St. Catharines, because the trustees of the Zion Baptist Church had removed 2 of their ministers. So that's how Burns came to St. Catharines in 1860. And unfortunately, 2 years later, after he turned the debt of the church around because it was in financial ruin, he passed away at the age of 28, and he's buried here at Victoria Lawn Cemetery.
Right. Now, another question I have to ask you. I understand that in Canada at one time there was some kind of revolt, slavery revolt, and I noticed I looked through the history books. I didn't find too much on it, and that happened in Canada. Do you know anything about that?
Well, there were a few of them. Is there any individual in particular? Like the biggest one here was the case of Solomon Mosby in 1837.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So they tried to extradite him, but that didn't happen. The community came out in record numbers, about 400 strong. And then when he was supposed to be returned to slavery, it was stopped. 2 people were killed, and Mosby took off to England, and then he eventually doubled back and returned to Niagara.
I see. Okay. Now, one of the other things I'd like to speak to you about is your relationship with Henry Gates.
Dr. Gates, the wonderful man.
Yes, yes, yes. I want to know, what was it like to work with him? Because I know you made some significant contributions.
Oh, it was awesome. So the church was fortunate enough to be featured in Dr. Gates's PBS series, the 2013 one, Many African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross. So he decided that he wanted to film the location that Harriet Tubman attended, and that was the Salem Chapel BME Church. So he was here for a couple of days. We had the interview. It was funny as all heck. It's episode number 2. We're actually talking about freedom seekers, so fugitives or runaways. And we're talking about when the enslavers, the slaveholders, or the slave power, to give it the proper term, diagnosed runaways as having a disease called dratopia. So, when they used to say, it was only the best picked ones that ran away because they had white blood in them and all that craziness they used to talk about.
Right.
But we were actually talking about that. So if you go back and you look at the episode, you'll see that I'm a little bit serious, and I'm saying that, they were accusing us of being bent, which was another term, being crazy. And he's laughing, but it was great. I loved it. And it was a blessing to be in there and have the church featured in his documentary.
Right. Okay. That was very good, because I was terribly interested in your relationship with him and how easy it was to work with him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, he's a wonderful man, very down to earth. You would think that someone of his stature would be extremely pompous and arrogant. He is not, which is great. He was so warm to us. It was unbelievable.
Okay. Now, I understand you're a trustee of the British Methodist Episcopal Church. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So in my trustee position, I have a higher voice and a vote than regular members. And we have just a small membership. So with me, it's with regards, and the other trustees, we're in charge of the maintenance of the church to make sure that everything is taken care of. So we have, it's easier for me to say our parent body is the AME Church. They were and they always have been, but we split in 1856, but we still have the same governance structure. So as a trustee, it gives me a stronger voice. As well as holding that position, I'm the archivist. But we really don't, we have the archivist position, but what's forefront with the Salem Chapel is the history, because it's a sacred destination tourist attraction. So with the archivist position comes the historian position, and that's how I acquired that.
Right. Okay. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to go to a brief break.
The Salem Chapel is celebrating Black History Month with an open house featuring history talks and tours of the church.
The church plays a significant role in the history of St. Catherine's. It was constructed by African American freedom seekers in 1855, and it's actually the 3rd church in St. Catherine. So it originally started as an AME, African Methodist Episcopal. We had 2 prior to this, and today it continues as a house of worship, but it's where the Black community still gathers together for different types of functions.
Rochelle, I'm sure you meet descendants of the freedom seekers. Can you tell us some stories that they tell you?
Descendants of the freedom seekers, they're all over the place. So it's my heritage and cultural group. Everybody has stories to tell, but what everybody likes to do is talk about their family connection either to the Salem Chapel or the Zion Baptist Church. A lot of the stories that have been handed down are oral histories. Some of them have been proven and some of them have been debunked. So a lot of the old stories that were passed down, we no longer discuss them.
What exactly do you want to say about the history of the church?
That's an excellent question. What do I want to say about the history of the church? other than the fact that it's a monument, it's a tribute to the courageous freedom seekers who had the courage to escape from enslavement by way of the Underground Railroad and make it to the Gateway of Freedom, St. Catharines, which was the last stop on the Eastern Line.
Rochelle gave 2 talks as part of today's open house. For those connected to the church, seeing the pews full was a welcome sight. Jude, you've been a member of this church since 1970. Tell us about the church through the years.
Well, the church has grown through the years, I must say, and the most important thing recently, making this site the BME Church historical site. I think it was long overdue in respect to the historical facts and so on.
What would you like to see for the church going forward?
Well, I'd like to see more awareness, more publicity, more community involvement, and so on.
Yes, it's good. I think my grandmother would be, if she was alive, she would be happy, because when we were growing up, we didn't attend this church. I didn't attend this church every Sunday or anything, but I came here a lot when she would put on different programs and we would come to it, and I would bring my friends and stuff. And she was always happy when the church was full, so I think that would make her very happy.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
The most celebrated member in the church's history is none other than Underground Railroad conductor Harriet Tubman. Tubman attended the church from 1851 to 1862.
Tubman was well known here in St. Catharines. There is a few accounts of her arriving with freedom seekers. Hiram Wilson, who was the station manager for St. Catharines, documented those accounts. Sometimes he called her the Sable Heroine. She was also a member of the 1852 Refugee Slaves Friends Society. More importantly, she was known as Moses. So there is an account in 1856 where a former slave, a free black man now living on British soil, approached Tubman, known as Moses, and asked her to return to the South to rescue his fiancée named Tilly, and he paid her to do that. That account is well documented as well. We know that she operated a boarding house where she sheltered her parents and freedom seekers that she guided to St. Catharines. And we also know that during her first winter, she was working in the forestry business. So she was cutting down trees, so probably walnut trees or whatnot, chopping up timber. So that was an account by Franklin Sanborn in 1863. So we know Tubman did a lot.
Welcome back to Carol Journey TV. Today we're having a conversation with Miss Rochelle Bush, my cousin in Canada, and we're going to talk more about the Underground Railroad. Rochelle? Yes, now let's talk about the Underground Railroad.
The North Star, following the North Star.
Right.
What I like about it is that St. Catharines was one of the major terminals, so the last stop. So we all know that the Underground Railroad ended at the U.S. border,
Right.
because bounty hunters weren't able to cross the border. So wherever they settled in Canada would have been their last stop, with the exception of one, and that was St. Catharines. And that's because Frederick Douglass identified it as being the last stop on the Eastern Line of the Underground Railroad in his second biography, so the 1881 that he published. So he stated that, it started off in Baltimore, and of course he would not name the name of the agent because it was in the South. Then you move on to Wilmington, Delaware, where Thomas Garrett is, then Philadelphia, of course, William Still. Then you're in New York City, Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, New York, Frederick Douglass's station, and then Suspension Bridge at Niagara Falls, New York. And then, of course, crossing the bridge, and then the final stop would be St. Catharines. So if it wasn't for Frederick Douglass documenting that, guess what? It may be difficult for us in this day and age to claim that St. Catharines was a final terminal. And that's because there's so much interest about the Underground Railroad and its narrative being rewritten by so many people.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Now, Harriet Tubman, she remarried, and she remarried to a young gentleman who's quite young.
Nelson Davis.
Right, so he can get some kind of insurance or some kind of coverage or something.
So she could get his pension check.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Good for Sister Tubman.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? We refer to her as a revolutionary
Right.
because the part of her narrative that speaks to St. Catherine's, because there's three. So we have Maryland, of course, her birthplace when she was enslaved, then St. Catherine's when
Right.
she was the woman known as Moses because she was an Underground Railroad operative, and then of course Auburn, New York. So and that's where she remained after the Civil War for the rest of her life. So we speak more to her narrative, and it's her most famous narrative. That's why we're so proud of her, and that's why she's a person of national importance here. So we cover her time, even though other sites do, but our sole focus is on her being Moses of the Underground Railroad.
Right. Okay. Now, one of the questions that I need to ask you, I need to ask your feelings and how you feel about our present election with Mr. Biden being our new president,
Oh, very pleased with him.
and
Very pleased.
and also our new vice president.
Very pleased with her. Very
Right.
pleased. Thank you, Jesus.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the thing about it, I still say that he's 78 years old, and he's got 4 years to serve, and I don't know if he's gonna be able to serve 4 years. But if he don't, Kamala is going to be the president.
Exactly. And
That's
you
what
know what?
right now, the
There was
black woman president.
a lot of vetting to get her into that position. So you know his good friend Barack, had weighed in on that. But
Right.
if it does happen, they're going to go crazy, crazier than when it was Barack Obama.
Right, exactly.
I'm waiting for the shootout on the streets because
Right.
some of them white boys aren't there. You can see that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Sad, very sad.
It is sad,
Mhm.
because they're saying that the elections were not done right. And the thing about it is Donald Trump don't have a leg to stand on, because what happens is, as of November 20th, even though he won't concede as president, if his butt isn't out of the White House, there are going to be security police who are going to escort him out of the White House.
Yeah,
Okay.
January 20th, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
January 20th. Yes.
Hey, I hope to see him handcuffed, being escorted out of the White House. I would love that. Would love it. And they're saying today that he fired Esper over those Confederate statues because
Mhm.
they want to change the name of the military bases.
Right.
Listen, I can only tell you this. I thank God I am living to see the day all this lost cause craziness is coming to an end. I just
Right.
wish my ancestors were here to see it. No.
Right.
Yes, very happy about that.
This, he had a lot of issues going on. He was obviously a racist. Okay.
Definitely.
So that took care of one thing. And the thing about it is, he was wanted to put a ban on the different religious groups and different ethnic groups, especially the children who were children of the immigrants that came here into this country. And those children now are adults and they're dreamers. Okay, well, we call them dreamers.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to take and send them back where they came from. And many of them came here as children. So they don't know the origin of their country at all and everything. So that's one thing I was glad that Biden said that he would acknowledge that and get rid of that ban. Okay, that's one of the things I was glad to hear, because these children are all adults now, and they were brought here. They were brought here as children.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, they should be given some kind of citizenship, okay? Because they didn't come here on their own, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that I was glad that Biden is going to address and take care of.
Biden needs to go get those kids that are locked in cages.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yes.
stop that craziness. Mm-mm.
Exactly. The ones from Mexico. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And half
Mm-mm.
of those kids in Mexico don't even know where their parents are, or who their
See,
parents are.
to the outside world looking in, it is completely abnormal and bizarre. Who would ever think that a country as powerful as the United States prides themselves on their founding fathers in a democracy? And it's, that's something else we can get into. The founding fathers, listen, those clowns need to know their founding fathers were monsters. They were enslavers. Here, they're loyalists. What's the difference between the two of them? Canada had slavery too. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's the people who are flying the flags and carrying those assault rifles in the street, like they're the National Guard and they want to control everybody. No. So that is completely bizarre. My number one thing, Carol, that I hope Biden does, do something, have that Second Amendment amended, because that is craziness. That is craziness. And the worst part was when you had all them white men going into the Capitol in Michigan to terrorize a woman, the governor. No.
Right.
The rest of the world is seeing the United States as total chaos and madness.
Right.
And it looks like a fail. It looks like it failed.
Right. Well, it's madness right now too. Donald Trump is filing lawsuits all over the place. So there's a lot of madness going on right now and everything. And
my hope is he goes to prison.
Yeah, well, he won't concede. That's one thing he's not going to do. And he'll probably be the only president that will not concede.
What he has done has shook the core of the earth, not just the United States. It's affecting everybody because it is a global community. So what he has done and his enablers have done, it's not just in the US, it's everywhere. It's impacting us here in Canada as well.
Right. Well, you know what I want to do now? I want to have you come back, and we're going to have an open discussion on this and some of the other issues dealing with the family reunion.
Nice.
Yes, because I really enjoyed this conversation with you.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
And you gave me a wealth of information.
Thank you.
You gave me a lot of information.
Excellent.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to close.
Okay. Thank you for having me. You have a good one.
And thank you for being on my show.
You're welcome.
Yeah.